it's taking longer to grade the portfolio. So hopefully I'm getting that by the end of this month. So anyway, that's me. Okay, go. There we go. All right, so first we're going to talk about the purpose of differentiation. What is it, why do it, and how to do it? I know you guys know that, but we're just going to talk a little bit. And then about being flexible. And that's really the key for differentiation, is not being set on a certain thing that you have to do, or not being flexible enough to change what you're doing, maybe even in the middle. And then we'll talk about some tools that help when you're differentiating, like different texts, using choice, and using questioning. And if you all have any questions throughout, just, speak up. Turn on your mic and speak up. I don't know if I get a notification if you put it in the chat, but I'll check the chat, or maybe Kelsey can help me out with the chat and tell me if somebody has a question. I don't know if she's even in here, but anyway. So if you have it open, if you have your version of the presentation open, if you could click on that Padlet link, or you can just take your phone and scan that QR code, and it will take you to a Padlet. And I just want to get your all's idea of what differentiation is. Like, how do you see it in your room? Like, what does it look like in your classroom? So if you don't mind to take just a couple seconds or minutes to do that for me. And there's no right or wrong answer, so don't be shy. And it doesn't have to be long either. Okay, you guys are testing my wait time. Is anybody actually typing anything? Or should I move on?
Danna, it's like asking me to do like sign in and all kinds of stuff. So
yeah, I didn't have the app, Danna, so I'm trying to install the app. Did you just use the chat feature?
I don't know. I don't use it on my phone.
I haven't ever used it on my phone either.
I didn't realize you all would have to sign in and all that junk. Sorry. Do you hear the dog? She's being extra loud right now with her snoring. Oh, yay, good. You just put it in the perfect. Yeah, Brandy, I put the link up in the chat, but I'll put it again. All right, so being flexible to meet various needs of students. Giving students choice in process and product to demonstrate their learning. That's exactly part of the stuff I'm going to talk about, process and product. Allowing students to use their own strengths and intelligences. And reaching numerous students at different levels. Good. Perfect. You have a good idea already. So I just wanted to put a little bit of research in here just because I feel like it gives some validity to what I'm talking about. If there's actual like peer-reviewed research. So experts, and they're listed there, they say that the ways to support differentiated classroom practices are focusing on the essential ideas and skills, which if you are using standards-based grading or any version of that, that's what it's talking about. So, for example, if you're teaching a novel, you're not going to give a test over what color shirt Heathcliff was wearing in chapter 3. You're going to focus on the skills that you want students to learn. So, inference, different comprehension skills, things like that. And then, which allows you to maybe use different text for different students because you're teaching the skill and not the text. Responding to individual student differences. So somebody already said that. So learning styles, prior knowledge, interests, level of engagement. Was in the co-teaching PD yesterday, I think, and they were talking about grouping students by interest. So however you need to group your students based on what your lesson is. And then when you are grouping your students, group them flexibly. So the groups are not going to stay the same. So depending on what the lesson is, groups will change. Or what your goal is for the lesson, your groups might change. And then you've got to give those formative assessments throughout your unit or your lesson, like daily or every few days or once a week, however you do it. But you've got to continue with the assessment so that you see how your students' abilities are changing or not changing, and you can change your groups based on those. And then with that, continually assessing, reflecting, adjusting what you're doing with content, process, and product. So I'm going to talk about those 3 things specifically, but I'm also going to include environment in there too. So you've got, with differentiation, it's always changing what you're doing in your classroom. All right, so first of all, we're going to talk about environment. Giving students choice in environment. So this is a picture of my classroom the year before last. And unfortunately, this is not going to be possible this year. I now have 31 desks in my room, which I'm not happy about, but that's life right now. But when my classroom was like this, students had a choice of where they would sit and how they would learn. And so you kind of have to let go of some of the control that you have in the classroom, which is difficult for a lot of teachers. But you have to kind of let students do what they need to do to learn the way that they need to learn. So I don't know about you, but those school desks are pretty uncomfortable after sitting in them 6 hours a day. So if I had a chance to sit on a couch or in a beanbag chair or stand up at a pub height table, I might want to do that. And when kids are comfortable, they're going to learn. They're going to be more receptive to learning. I've got a couple of links on here. One is to this rules and contracts. So it's just a Google search for flexible seating contracts, because there are so many different kind of agreements that you can create for your students. But the basic premise of the agreement that I would use is just, you can sit where you want as long as you can learn there. But if you aren't learning, or you're distracted, or you're distracting others, then I can move you or ask you to move. Simple as that. And then just some management issues. When kids are on Chromebooks, if they are around, like sitting against the wall, you can't see the screen of the Chromebook. So I put, they aren't in this picture, but I put like a mirror behind them so that I could see the Chromebook reflections in the mirror. So just little things like that that you kind of learn as you go. Discipline goes back to the rules and contract. And then I've got all of this stuff from donations. I made a donors choose to buy some things. I asked and begged my friends and family for anything that they might want to get rid of. I went to yard sales, Goodwill, some parents and students donated. So this amount of stuff in the room took 2 or 3 years to accumulate. So you're gonna ease into it a little bit at a time, which is good for both you and your wallet, because it gives you a chance to get used to allowing a little bit of that choice. So does anybody have questions about differentiating the environment of their classroom? Okay. And like I said, this year is going to be completely different. So you might just like keep this in the back of your mind for when things get back to somewhat normal. All right, moving on. Next we have product. So you can vary the products that your students create or complete as assessments. You can vary your formative assessments. You can vary your summative assessments. The example I have here is a choice board, which works really well for both formative and summative, depending on what you need. But the next bullet is blended learning. And if you look at this choice board, I think you can actually click, yeah, the link that says getting to know you a little bit further down, that's a link to this choice board, which you can look at later if you want. You feel free to copy and make it yours. But it's blended learning. So even though this choice board is on the computer, and they can certainly complete things from the choice board on their Chromebooks using technology, there are options that do not use the technology or use a Chromebook or whatever. So you want to, the biggest thing is that you have a variety of choices. So in this one, since I teach English, my coworker actually developed the choices on this, but when she did, she thought about what she wanted to learn about the students. So she has a lot of writing in there. So an introduction letter, I am poem, a goal proposal, so that she can assess their writing while learning a little bit about them. This is like a beginning of the year assignment. But then she also has some fun things on there to kind of see your student's personality. So like a lip sync challenge. And you can see when students do that, what kind of personality they have very, very quickly and easily. So when you give students choice, you have to make sure that you really do have a variety of learning styles within those choices. And it's something that I've seen is that teachers provide a choice board or like a tic-tac-toe board, but then over the course of a few weeks, they require students to do everything on that board. So that's not really differentiation. You have to be flexible enough to be okay with them only doing 3 of the choices or however many. And you have to design it so that you can assess what you want to assess with whichever 3 or 4 or whatever that they choose. And you can reuse these. I've got a King Lear one and a Hamlet one as well, which are linked there. And I could very easily change either one of those to apply to any text. So like once you get a really good choice board made, you can apply it to different text or topics within your subject area. And because again, you're assessing the standards or the skills and not necessarily like the text itself. And I've already talked about this, but targeting multiple intelligences is important here. And then I've got 2 more links to many more resources. You can find, I mean, no matter what you're teaching, if you put in whatever the topic is and choice board, you're probably going to find something that's already made that you can tweak for yourself. So don't get overwhelmed with having to create 8 assignments for one assessment, because if you look out there, there's lots of stuff already created that you can just tweak for yourself. Does anyone have questions about this? Choice boards? Okay. Anything in the chat? Is there anything in the chat that needs to be addressed?
No, Danna, I think you're good.
Okay. All right, next thing is process. So the thing that I focus on with the process of learning is questioning. And the way that I differentiate that is that I help students learn how to ask their own questions. And so they ask the questions that they want answered, or they ask the questions that they're curious to hear the answer to from their peers. Like if they have a certain idea about something and they want to see what their peers think, they can use those questioning strategies. So I have this link where it says leveled questions. I'm going to click on that. And this is probably one of my favorite reference documents of the 3 levels of questioning. And definitely I would give this to students. I would probably modify it obviously for lower grade levels, but this is for high school. But it gives students the different types of questioning. So explicit, which is the kind of questioning that you can just put your finger on, like the answer is there and that's it. The implicit questions, where they have to do a little bit of analyzing, inferring, that kind of thing. And then experience-based, where they're applying whatever you're teaching to themselves or the world, or coming up with a hypothesis based on what they've learned, that sort of thing. So the first page gives you like the skills for each type of question and gives you some examples. These examples seem to be history based. But the second page I think is the best page for students because it gives them stems for each type of question. So especially at first when students are learning to make their own questions, it's good for them to have this kind of reference to help them start out. So if you ask them to create 2 explicit, 2 implicit, and 2 experience-based, and it's the first time you've asked them to do it, having this reference makes it a little bit easier for them. And then using the questions that they've created, you can do that in different ways too. You can do a Socratic seminar style. You can create a Padlet where they pose their question and their peers will answer in the comments. You can do a Flipgrid, which basically is the same as Padlet, but it's videos. So they can ask a question and their students can reply like on the video that they asked the question. And then when the students create the questions, I don't normally, going back to the choice, I wouldn't say, okay, you have to answer the 3 questions that Johnny created. I would have all of the students post their questions and say, okay, you have to answer any 2 implicit, 2 explicit, 2 experience, or whatever it is that you would want. But they would have a choice with the questions that they answer, as well as creating the questions that they want answered. Questions about this, or comments, or ways that you've used it in your classroom that have worked? Okay. The bad thing about presenting online like this is that you can't see anyone, so you don't, like, I don't know if maybe you're asleep or if you're interested, and like I can't force you to speak by like giving you the teacher eye. So anyway, that's the challenge with online learning, I guess. All right, so next we have process. Oh no, we're still on process. Sorry. Another example is literacy circles, and this kind of goes back to the choice. But when I've seen teachers do literacy circles, you have the same 4 or 5 roles that like they've had since you were in kindergarten. You have an illustrator, a vocabulary person, a question person, like it's usually the same 4 or 5. And then throughout the unit of the text, the students will rotate within those roles. So again, it's sort of like giving them a tic-tac-toe board, but making them do every square on the tic-tac-toe board. So you want to make sure that you don't have students do every role, because again, that's not differentiation. That's not tapping into their own talents and skills. So this book, Making Curriculum Pop, there are, I don't know, 50, maybe 40 different roles that students can take in a literacy circle. And so it's not just geared to like novel study, for example. There are roles that you can pull for anything that students are reading. So whether they're reading their physics textbook or A Tale of Two Cities, there are choices in this book that you can pull that will allow students to engage with the text. There's the link at the bottom of this slide, the sample. It has maybe 10, I think, examples of the roles that are in this book. But the way that I've used it in the past is I think about the skills that I want, obviously, that I want students to learn from whatever it is that I'm teaching. And then I go through the book and I pull the roles that lend themselves to that skill. So I'm still thinking about the skills, and I'm still thinking about standards based learning and grading and all of that. But I'm just giving a variety of ways for students to show that they've met that skill or standard. All right, and if you have any questions, just chime in. And finally, we're talking about content. So differentiating content with varied texts. On the right-hand side here, I have lots and lots of links to websites and different things that allow you to vary the content. So CommonLit, Actively Learn, and Newsela, they all provide basically articles, fiction or nonfiction, depending on which one you choose. Some of them have both, but you can search by like a theme or a topic that you want students to learn about, and you will get results, and the results will have different reading levels. So you can pull those and then maybe not give students a choice this time, but assign them the text with their reading level that matches their ability, or maybe a little bit harder. This one right here that I'm showing, that is Newsela, I think. Correct me if I'm wrong. And you can see there's a drop down, and you have an article there, and you can change the reading level of the article. So in this case, students could all read the same article, but you can still differentiate their reading level based on the student's abilities. And then we also have books. There's hundreds, thousands of free books in the public domain and more every year. So the link I have there is for Project Gutenberg, which has all of those texts available. So again, since you're working on skills and standards, it doesn't really matter what book students read or what text they read, because you just want them to learn how to use inferencing. And so you can give them a choice. And you can always look up the Lexile level of the books, and either you can assign them based on that or provide choices of books with the same Lexile just based on interest, however you want to do it. Some arts and humanities, you've got Google Arts and Culture right there, which allows students to have choice in like if they're going to analyze a painting or something, they can choose from, whatever impressionist painting that you want them to choose. And then for business classes, you've got Adweek and Adage, which again allows students to have choice with analyzing ads or just anything to do with business. And it'll send, the business ones will send you to, like, for example, a website that's advertising something, and you can use insert learning. I'm not going to go into that, but it's where you can, if you don't know, you can insert questions into any web page. And so you can put the questions in whatever web page the students choose to work on and to analyze based on what your objective is for your lesson. Any questions about the varied texts? So again, with content, you can vary like skill or reading level, or you can provide choice based on interest. All right, so just to recap, we've got environment, and at this point in time, we have Chromebooks, we have iPads, so you don't really, need desks for students to write on if you're using those. We have process, so using online discussion boards, having students create and answer self-made questions. You've got your content, which I just talked about, and then your product, which you can use choice boards or however you want to create those choices. All right, so I have a little activity here, and we have an example of a lesson, or actually it's just a worksheet, I guess, about the outsiders. And at this point, it's kind of straightforward, plain, not differentiated in any way. Students don't really have a choice. And like this, students have to write for every answer. Just like it's just pretty plain and boring and how it is. So if you want to just put in the chat what would the goals or objectives or standards be for this particular lesson. So that's always where you want to start. So, or you can just say like, what's one objective that this lesson would be? It says it right at the top. Character development, right? So if the standard or the scale is character development, and we have these characters that are listed on the side here, we don't necessarily have to have them write about each one of these things. We can do other things. So then we're going to ask, what are the needs of our students? So if you can give them choices. So some students, they're going to want to write out the description of the physical description, the personality traits. They're going to want to write that out. Some students are going to want to draw it. You could have students act them out. Like you could use multiple intelligences to let the kids choose how they want to show you that they know and can describe the character development of Daryl, for example. So varying the product of that. And then once you figure out the needs of your students, you can decide how you're going to differentiate. A lot of times I will differentiate product and content, for example. So they might have different texts and they have a choice of the product that they come up with out of those texts. Okay, so any questions? Okay, so since the Padlet thing didn't work very well last time, we're going to skip this Padlet. It was just to ask you how you know, what you thought about that lesson or how you would differentiate it. All right, so if you would like, and I would really love for you to do it, I've got a Flipgrid link there, and it's just for you to sort of reflect about how you would implement any of these techniques in your classroom. Like, how, if you have a lesson in mind, or maybe you can get a lesson in mind, how would you vary content, process, or product, or multiple? And you can also leave whatever questions you have there on that Flipgrid. The Flipgrid code is there on the right, or you can, again, like we did before with the Padlet, you can scan that QR code, but I think it might ask you to download the app if you don't already have it. And then finally, I've also got a feedback link there if you want to give me some feedback on the presentation today. This is my first presentation in a while, so probably could have been better, but I think you got the point. So if you would do either one of those or both, that would be great. And then on the Flipgrid, the reason that we're doing that is so that you can go back later and see what your peers or the other people in the meet said and kind of get some ideas based on those. And then that's it for me at this time. We have about 20 minutes until it was supposed to end, and that's what Brandy asked, that you all have time to like actually think about what I've talked about and how you might apply it. And maybe, like I said, come up with a lesson or two that you can differentiate in some way. And so I'll be here for questions or help or whatever until 9:30. So if you want to kind of think about or pull up some lessons and ask me about it, or ask each other how you might differentiate, that is great. And I'm going to turn off my mic so you don't hear the dog snoring. But if you have a question, just let me know. Thanks, everybody.
Hey, Danna, we're supposed to be filling out that Google form at the conclusion of every session. Is that right?
Yes, and Brandy is supposed to pop in here and leave the link. Do you have the link?
I do. Do you want me to put it in the chat?
Yeah, yeah, go ahead. I forgot about that. Thanks for reminding me. So if you are still here, Paige is gonna put the link of the, I don't know, exit ticket, or I don't know what they call it, for this session. Just fill it out to make sure that you get credit for this session. All right. Hi, everyone. I have 9:30, so we'll go ahead and get started. If you didn't type in the bit.ly, I'm going to put it here in the chat, so you can just click it. I've linked some resources on the presentation, so if you want to look at them later or have them for reference, grab that bit.ly so that you can go back whenever you need to. All right, so this is discussion and group strategies. Can everyone hear me? I'm coming through. You're good. You can see the presentation. You can just put like a yes in the chat, or unmute your mic and just say, yeah, I can hear you. Thank you. All right, so let's get started. This is just a little bit about me. I am an English teacher at Central Hardin. I am really excited about being ISTE certified. And that, well, it was supposed to go through already, but like with the COVID and everything, they're taking a little bit longer to grade the portfolios, but they said hopefully by the end of this month I'll have that, and so I'm excited about that. And I've been teaching for 14 years. So let's move along. All right, there we go. Wait. Okay. All right, so we're going to start with discussion. And with discussion, the most important part of a discussion is having good questions. So that's always where I start, and that's what I teach students first. I teach them how to create or produce their own questions based on whatever it is that we're doing. So I've got I've got this graph here of blooms, and then 3 types of questions. So explicit, implicit, and then experience-based or connections. And you'll see how that moves up the Bloom's taxonomy, and the words that are sort of associated with it. So for example, explicit questions are the ones where students can point to the answer in their text. There's no question about it. Like, that is the answer. So that would just be like recall, defining that type of thing. Implicit are the questions where students have to analyze a little bit or do some inferring. So that would be the next 3 levels. So they would have to support their answers. And then finally, we have the experience-based or connections, which is the highest level, where they apply or create or develop their own opinions or their own connections based on what they've read. So this link up here at the top, actually, let me change the way I'm presenting so that I can have that up. Entire screen. Okay. So that link, which you should be able to see the document now, this is one of the most important reference documents that students can have. This is geared toward high school, but you can certainly modify this or tweak this for any grade level. But the first page of the document here explains what each level of questioning does, or what the purpose is. So it, again, for that Bloom's, which your students don't really necessarily need to know, the whole education theory about Bloom's taxonomy and all of that. But this document still gives them those words and key terms that are associated with each level. So you can see there, like under text explicit, defining, describing, identifying, that kind of thing. And then also gives examples. The examples on this one are history based. But again, you can tweak that to whatever subject or topic that you want. So I definitely go over this, and you can scaffold this any way that you want. You can break it up into days, and the first day you only talk about explicit questions and have them come up with their own and answer their own. Or you can just give it to them all at once, just depending on your level of students. But then here on the second page, you've got the question stems. And this is what is very, very helpful for students, especially when they first start creating these questions on their own, because it's, I don't know, like when you first became a teacher and you had to create some of your own questions, like it's hard. It's hard to think of what do I want to ask about this text. But I'm sure if you've asked your students, hey, read this and come up with 3 questions, they're going to ask questions like, what color was the main character's shirt on page 3? Like, that's unfortunately, that's the kind of questions that we get sometimes. So this helps students, first of all, vary what their questions are and like how they ask their questions, but it also helps them target those 3 different levels of questions. And this certainly isn't an exhaustive list of how they can do that, but it definitely gives them some choices and some things to think about. And I don't know if you can hear, but I have a pug, and she's asleep and snoring next to me. So if you hear that snoring, it's not me, it's the dog. So sorry about that. That's just her life. She just snores. Okay. So do you have any questions about the questions? About the question stems or how they create questions? Okay. So like that, I can't stress enough that if you don't do anything else, like spend quality time talking about going over and learning how to create these questions. I have a strong belief that teachers, or I don't know how to put it, but like questions should come from students for students. I think they respond better to questions that come from their peers, and they don't feel like the teacher is trying to trick them, or I don't know. I just think that questions that come from their peers work better, and if you front load it and really do a good job teaching them, they're going to come up with the questions that you would have asked anyway. So just make sure you spend time on this, if nothing else. All right, so now I'll get into some different types of discussions. So here we have a modified fishbowl. I'm sure you all have heard of the fishbowl discussion, where you've got observers on the outside and the people on the inside talk. I like to do a modified version of that, where the observers on the outside, they have jobs too, or they are participating in their own discussion as well. So if you are lucky enough to have computers or Chromebooks or whatever in your room, the students on the inside will use their questions and have their own discussion, again, about whatever text that you have. You know, if you're in a social studies class, you can do it over a primary text or secondary text or even your textbook. If you're in English class, they can do it over just whatever text or topic that you have. It doesn't really matter. Like, these techniques are going to work. So anyway, the inside circle is having their discussion based on their questions. They're answering each other. The outside circle, if I have Chromebooks, I really like to have the outside circle having their own discussion, like their own silent discussion, based on what the inside circle is talking about. So I would use a platform like Padlet or Back Channel or Today's Meet, like a discussion board or a chat room type feature. And I would ask the people on the outside silent circle to make observations or maybe pose additional questions or respond on their own to the questions that are being answered on the inside circle. So they aren't just observing, and they aren't just they have a more active and engaged role in the discussion. Another thing that I like to do with the outside circle is have them do peer assessment. So after you get a couple of these under your belt and students kind of know how this works, I would start giving the students a rubric or just depending on what I wanted to assess. Each person on the outside might be assigned 1 or 2 people on the inside, and then they would take notes, assess, maybe depending on what you want, maybe even just tally what their assigned person on the inside circle did. So if you've ever tried to grade a Socratic discussion or like a whole class discussion, it can get overwhelming. So with this, you can put those students to work, and even if you just have them take notes, you know, that's helpful because they're taking notes on one person, whereas you would have to take notes if you were doing it on everyone. And so if you could just listen to and observe the discussion as it happens, take up the notes, and then you know, make your grade or assessment after the fact as you reference the notes. It's just a way to kind of help you out as a teacher, but it also helps them understand what's expected of them when they are on the inside discussing. It's hard to have multiple screens. I'm just trying to check the chat every now and then. If you have any questions as we're going through this, please click in the chat, write your question, or please feel free to just unmute your mic. There's only a few of us in here, so unmuting your mic and just asking is great too. So does anybody have any questions about that modified fishbowl or inside, outside circle type thing? Okay, I'm going to get a little bit more into the assessment of that in a little bit, or assessment, I guess, really of all of these. All right, so now I want to talk about a couple of the tools that you can use, especially if we're doing NTI or if you want a more tangible discussion, or maybe the people on the outside circle can use these tools to have their own discussion. So first of all is Padlet. And here, I'm just going to check. Have you all used Padlet? Can you give me like a thumbs up if you used it, a thumbs down if you haven't, either in the chat or just tell me so I know how much I need to go into this. Okay. So we have a mix. So I'll just kind of hit on it on each of the types of Padlets that you can create. So if you go to Padlet.com, you sign in with Google like everything, and then you can create what, I guess, depending on what you choose, it's like a discussion board, or like an online poster board of that students can use to comment, type, discuss, whatever. So there are several different types of Padlets that you can create, and I've got examples of all of them over here linked. So the first example, oh no, the Padlet's archived. Well, that's not good. Are all of these archived? No. Okay. So I'm going to skip the stream one. Sorry about that. And then we have the grid. So this is where, for example, like students maybe they would post a question and it just shows up like this. And like this one are just facts, but if a student could post a question at the top there, you can include a picture if you want or not. And then and then you can make the feature where students can comment on the question or comment on someone's comment. On this one, they have the thumbs up or the thumbs down. So if you ask a question or another student ask a question and these are the answers, you could have students like vote on the best answer, for example, using that little thumbs up, thumbs down function. Shelf, oh my gosh, that's archived too. It's okay. We'll skip that. I'll come back to it. This is the back channel feature, and so this one's going to be like a chat room, or even like your Facebook feed. So it just pops up all in a stream like this. Whenever a student posts, the next one, like it just kind of scrolls through. Students can comment on each other's. This one has the little heart feature enabled. So it kind of works, just like a Facebook heart. Like if you like something, that's what that is. So students can like the questions or the responses that they think are the best or make the most sense to them, or however you want to do that. I'm sorry, I checked my links, but apparently I didn't check all of them. The link at the bottom here that says examples, that's where I got all of those that I just showed you. But as you can see, there are hundreds of examples, and they're all different types of Padlets. So for example, this one's a poll for the senior prom, and then they would like it. This is what what's it called? The stream. This one's what the stream looks like. It looks very similar to the grid, but it's just organized a little bit differently. Here's another back channel one. So time and kind of click through these, and you can see all of the different things that you can do with Padlet. And then I have this link that takes you to a video that shows you, oh, I'm going to pause that. That shows you how to create a Padlet. It'll show you, again, each of the types of Padlets and what to do and how to do it and how your students can use it and comment, and how you can change the settings to allow anything that you want. But I do want to show you real quick. I'm going to open this one that I created before. This is a shelf. So here, like I created topics, and then you can comment under the topic based on whatever it is you're going to comment. So you or students could put a question up here at the top, and then the students could answer down under each one. I'm just going to do a test and show you. Oops. So here under process, like if I'm the student, I've had my answer, but then other students can comment their answers or their responses to that initial answer. And then over here in the settings, there are lots and lots of settings, but the most important settings that you need to remember are the attribution. So display author name above each post. You're probably going to want to have that on. But even if you have it off, when you go to assess it or check to see what everyone did, you can turn it on and it'll still have their names on there. But if you want, like in class where you're doing it, if you want the responses to be anonymous, you can just turn it off for in class and then turn it back on when you go to look at it. You can turn the comment feature on and off. You have the different reactions. If you see down here at the bottom, you can even give them grades. So again, and then you've got, depending on your class of students, you've got this profanity filter. It replaces bad words with nice emojis. And you also, like, if you really have a questionable class, you can require approval. So, like, you would have to go through and approve each answer before it shows up on the Padlet. An example of using both of those. So I had a freshman creative writing class, and we were just brainstorming, and a student, I did not turn on the approval, I did not turn on the profanity, but a student commented and used a curse word, and I'm not really sure what they were thinking because I had the attribution on, so I could tell it was them anyway. So even if you don't turn on these, like, you can see who's not behaving, and sort of address it appropriately. But you want to make sure that the students sign in before they start to comment. And they just sign in like with Google, the same as anyone else would. All right, do you have any questions about the types of, like, all of the different types of Padlets that you can create? So basically any kind of discussion you want to have, Padlet has you covered, with commenting, with chat, with whatever it is. Okay. So the next thing that people ask, where is it? There it is. The next thing that comes up is how do you grade it? Because well, like in this, you just got all of these different responses and they have the attribution turned off. But if you had it turned on, like the student's name would be there. And so you would have to scroll through and look at all of these to find everything that Johnny said. So a very easy way to assess these is to use Control F. I don't know if you've heard of the find feature on your computer, but if you haven't, like, it's a lifesaver in many different ways. But you go to your Padlet, you push Control F, and then you can search a certain kid's name. So I'm gonna we'll just pretend back channel is a kid's name. So you see that occurs 13 times. So you might, like, if that was the kid's name, you could say, okay, that kid probably commented or posted 13 times. But then you can use the arrows to just scroll through, and it takes you to every time that is said. So not only can you see like how many times they commented, you can go through and like look at the quality of the comments as well. So Control F is a lifesaver when grading these discussions. All right, any questions before I move on? All righty. Moving on, we have Flipgrids next. Flipgrid has become pretty popular, so you've probably heard of it in case if not used it. Honestly, it works very much the same as Padlet. You or students can post videos, asking questions, making comments. Depending on the settings that you choose, other students can go in and make a video responding to a student. So they would click the student's initial question, for example, and then they would just use the comment feature you can type comments or you can create a video. On Flipgrid, you've got the same, sort of the same, like, different kind of reactions you can have. So you can do an emoji reaction, you can do the like reaction, you can do grading just like you do on Padlet. So honestly, I really think of Flipgrid as the same as Padlet, but with video. So that's where you can bring in some differentiation. Like if you have students that maybe aren't the strongest with writing. Apparently, I'm not the strongest with speaking this morning, but if you have the students who struggle with writing out their answers, but like those are the students that you can talk to and they can explain the whole thing to you out loud, like this is a good option for them. And a lot of times I like, if I'm doing a discussion that doesn't involve like sitting in the class, like it's a discussion where they can respond in their own time. So like it's only going to be on Padlet or only on Flipgrid. Sometimes I would give the option, you can do it on Padlet or you can do it on Flipgrid. So it kind of addresses both of the intelligences or talents or skills of a couple different types of students. So a Flipgrid is another option for discussing. All right, so depending on the grade level of your student, you're going to want to scaffold and adapt these. So before students come to a discussion, no matter if it's going to be in person in the classroom, if it's going to be online, they need to do some background work. We talked about questioning as background work, but they also need some background work for how they're going to answer. So first I have this quote / explanation chart. When I have students reading a text, fiction or nonfiction, a lot of times I would ask students to pull out quotes from the text, and I'm sure you all do this, pull out quotes from the text, put them on one side, and then, make their comments or whatever about that on the other side. So as you're having the discussion, an important thing is for students to use textual evidence. So they'll have the evidence there already in front of them, so they don't have to like search through it as the discussion is happening. They're already going to have some examples there that they've looked at and thought about before, that they can just go ahead and talk about and be confident about in the moment, instead of having to look through and figure it out right there in the middle of the conversations, because that's difficult for adults and students alike. Then I've got a couple of links here. We've got the sentence starters. So this again is sort of like the questioning, but this is an answering sentence stems. So you can have students have this reference in front of them to help them come up with how to start whatever they're going to say, which sometimes is a struggle. Like, maybe kids know what they want to say, but they don't know how to articulate it. So again, this is going to help them figure that out at least the first few times that you have discussions. And then finally, I have task cards. These task cards, I really like these. So you have different topics. So these are like basic, introductory. You go down to intermediate and then advanced, and then just different, including others, or you can have your own. But so I printed all of these out on cardstock, and I use different colors for like each type of question or response. And I would lay them out and have students maybe draw one from each pile. And then they would try, like, the challenge was I would ask them to try to use each one of them sometime throughout the discussion. And you could make it sort of a game at first, just discuss something that really doesn't have to do with any text that you're reading, just something that they like. And just to kind of practice using these. And it also helps, like if you say you have to use, for example, you have to use the 4 cards that you're given and you can't say anything else. So that's going to make those kids who like to talk the whole time, it's going to limit what they have to say, but then it's also going to give those shy kids or the kids who they can't quite articulate what they want to say, it's going to give them a way to do it with the stem that's on their card, but it's also going to give them a chance, because those other kids are going to have to be quiet for a little bit because they've used all their cards up in the first 3 seconds of the discussion, right? So then it gives the other kids an opportunity to actually say something without having to interrupt or interject where they might not feel comfortable doing that. So I really like these discussion cards. I use them quite a bit. All right, does anybody have any questions about that or anything so far? Okay. So again, those are just ways to kind of scaffold before you just set the students off and say, all right, discuss. It gives ways for them to help them figure out how to do that. You have to teach how to discuss as much as you have to teach what they're discussing. Sorry. All right, and so now with the assessment of these discussions, if you have tried to assess a discussion before, it's challenging. So I find the best way is to choose just a couple of things that I'm assessing instead of trying to score like everything all at the same time within like me doing everything while the kids talk. So you could have standards or skill based. And I would just choose like one or two standards that I'm trying to assess, and of course let the students know what those are. Like, I'm going to assess your ability to use inferencing, that standard, whatever. So the students know. It's always important for the students to know what you're looking for in the discussion. Then content assessment. So if they are discussing, I don't know, the Bill of Rights, and you want to assess their knowledge of the Bill of Rights, that might be a time that you use content assessment. And then we have questioning. Again, at the beginning of the year when they're learning how to question, this might be a good thing to assess. And tell the students, all right, I'm not going to assess so much your answers this time, but I'm going to assess your ability to ask different types of questions and the quality of those questions. Another thing at the beginning of the year that you could talk about is etiquette. So just simple speaking and listening skills. Some logistics of grading. It's always good to have a rubric, whether it's for a certain skill or standard, whatever it is that you're assessing. It's important for you to have the rubric and for the kids to have the rubric. And then if you're the one sort of taking notes and doing the assessing during the discussion, I like to write down the rubric score after each student speaks. So Johnny says his part, and I assess with the rubric right then, okay, that's a 3 answer, or that's a 2 answer, or that's a 1 answer. So that I don't have to try to remember after the whole discussion, maybe even at the next day, because you have discussions like all day, right? The next day trying to think, now what did Johnny say and was it any good? So it's a good idea to do that as you go. And then what I talked about a little bit with the modified fishbowl is self-reflection or peer scoring. So students using the rubric to score each other or to score themselves. And then these are a couple of record keeping or just ways for you to take notes for assessment. So if I've done the circle one before, and I've actually done it where I hang it up on the wall, and as kids are discussing, I'll draw the lines. So, for example, we have Michael right here. Poor little Michael didn't say anything. But then you have over here, Kira, I think is what it says. She said a whole lot of stuff. So if you have it like up on the board and you're drawing the lines from student to student as they speak, Kira's going to see, wow, I've said a whole lot and Michael hasn't said anything. Maybe I should shut my mouth for a little bit and let somebody else talk. It sort of gives them the visual clue to monitor themselves and what they're saying. And this teacher has a little key down here where they marked, they asked a question, they restated, they interrupted, they had a side conversation, whatever it is. So this is kind of interesting to do. And then this is a little rubric, like where you just circle 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 as the students speak. So those are just a couple of examples. Let me see, do we have? Yeah, the visual chart is really cool, and it's kind of interesting to do and let students see. Okay, so more discussion ideas. These are links. All of these are links to all of these different kinds of discussions. So small group discussion, whole group discussions, discussion bingo, which is kind of neat, and then you have discussion strategies divided by prep time. So if you have like 5 minutes to prepare, you can click on that and see what you can do with your 5 minutes. Or if you have more time to prepare, you know, it's sort of I really feel like all teacher blogs should be divided by prep time, because sometimes you have like 5 minutes because whatever you did in the previous class didn't work, and so now you need something new quick. And sometimes you're planning something for the next week, so that's kind of neat. So please, in your own time, look at these. There's so many resources and examples here, but I just don't have time in the time that we're given today. And then I like to tell this to students: don't raise your voice, improve your argument. All right, so that's all that I have for this. You can always email me or send me or tweet at me or whatever if you have questions. I also have a little feedback form for the presentation. If you want to do that, that just helps me. But let's go back. Do we have any questions right now? Brandy asked that we stop about 10 or 15 minutes early in case anybody has questions, or to give you a little bit of time in between sessions. So I will be here until 10:30. So if you have any questions, or like, oh yeah, there is a form. Thank you. There is a form you have to fill out for credit. 1 second. I'll get it. Okay, I think that's the link. So try out that link. Make sure it works. It doesn't have what hour, so I guess they're just counting, like, or maybe they're just saying the timestamp of when you sign in, because it's the same one for each session, so it's the same form. So okay, well, I'm gonna mute my mic so you don't have to hear my dog snoring anymore. But if you have questions, just put it in the chat or unmute and ask me. Like I said, I'm gonna be here. So thank you all for coming, and good luck this year with whatever it is we're doing. Hopefully, some of those technology options, if that's where we're going, hopefully you can use some of those. All right, thanks, guys.